an American flag.
Okay, make it so.
Easier said than done. I can't even get out of my Zoom.
Let me know when you're ready. I've got mine up.
You can visualize one, I think.
Okay.
I'm
She
good
can
at
probably
that.
pull it up, and she's sharing her screen, so we can all.
Easier said than
I pledge
done.
allegiance
Oh, here we
to
go.
the flag of the United States of America
And
and to the republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty
liberty, and justice for all.
All right. So now I'm going to turn everything over to Kate. I really appreciate the fact that leadership was so flexible in rescheduling these and also breaking them into smaller chunks. This is a lot of ground to cover, and I appreciate the flexibility in ensuring that we had what we needed to be successful in this budget period.
Okay, I'm the facilitator and Diane's the timekeeper and Kate is process person and the backup. So what I'd like for us to do is try to stick to the time limits if possible. And I'm sure Diane will keep us in check with that.
I have my timer.
Good. And actually, if I remember right, people have up to 15 minutes to present. I would suggest maybe around 12 minutes, Diane, if you could just give a heads up that they have 3 minutes left.
Yep.
Again, we'll try to stick to the timeline as best we can.
Yeah, and the amounts of time that are allocated in the agenda, I'm scrolling down a little bit here. It's either 10 or 15 minutes, and it kind of is dependent on what budget asks are in that department, whether there's a lot to talk about or slightly less to talk about. So that's why there's a difference there.
Good. Okay. Anything else before I turn it over to Kate? Any questions?
Has everybody had a chance to look at the tools that are in the agenda yet?
Yep.
Yes, sorry.
What do you say, Sandy? We good?
Yep, we're good. You're on.
Huh. Okay. So we do have at the top of the agenda, I'm sorry if I'm making people seasick with my scrolling. I can't really tell what it looks like on your end. But we do have at the top of our agenda the norms and the ACE habits of mind, which we use in all of our leadership council meetings. The norms are to ground us in the work and make sure that we are approaching all of these conversations, which can be a little heated sometimes, in a really practical and rational and compassionate and collaborative way. So we sort of ground ourselves in those norms and make sure that we are following them as a group and that we're functioning effectively as a group. The ACE habits of mind, I think Monique actually mentioned this last night in her presentation. This is part of the DataWise protocol, and it grounds us in the purpose of our work, that we are working in a cycle of action, assessment, and adjustment, that we're intentionally collaborating, and that we're using a relentless focus on evidence. So to prepare for the workshop, we've asked folks to read through the agenda. There is a ton of material attached to this agenda. If you got down into it, you'd see there's a lot of paper there. And what's interesting to me this year is that it's not paper anymore. And I guess I'm excited about that. I have to confess that I'm sitting here with a paper copy of the budget book next to me because I'm old and I just haven't made that transition yet. But I do appreciate.
I want a paper copy. I do not like doing this digitally.
I will get.
It works for the paper mills. I think she has stock in them.
Yeah, actually, it's just that I have a case of paper in my basement, and what else. So yeah, April, and anybody else who's looking for a paper copy, just grab my notebook here. I do have a few printed off, and just let me know and we'll arrange some sort of a secret meeting in the parking lot.
So I'll put that in the virtual parking lot so
Oh,
that
awesome,
anybody
yeah.
who wants a paper copy can just add their name.
Excellent plan. All right. So today's, actually all 3 days, order and progression of the presenters is based on the budget book. And we were trying to give people in this new environment of being online and not being in the same room together and maybe finding it a little awkward to figure out where we are and what our pathway is, just to give everybody someplace to ground themselves. So the order of the workshop is the order of the budget book. And so if you open that document and keep that on your screen as a reference, also in the slides, you'll see that there are page numbers at the top of each section that also refer you back to the budget book. So that's our norms. Our workshop tools, we have the slide deck, which we'll pull up in a second. We have a noticings, wonderings, and questions worksheet. And you'll see in the slides and on the agenda down here that we have breaks built in, but we also have questions. See, there's little question pieces right here. So what we're going to do is 2 sessions, 2 leadership team members will present their cost center, their building or their department, and then we'll have questions. So in order for you to retain your thoughts about those questions, we have the noticings and wonderings and questions worksheet, which is very simple, just a little header. And you can make one per department. You can make copies of this. You can type into a general one, whatever makes you happy, so that you know that you can go back and ask those questions when the question time arises. All right, now I got myself out of here. I have too many windows open. There we go. And the other,
Before you start, April has her hand up.
April, you're muted. There you go.
It shouldn't be. Diane, did you start YouTube?
I did.
Okay, perfect. I don't have the little thing that says whether or not we started.
Yes, I did. Thank you for checking them.
No, thank you.
And the last tool that's in this little section is the parking lot. And so when you're limiting yourself to 2-hour sessions with a ton of content, there are undoubtedly going to be a number of questions that we can't answer on the spot, or thoughts that we want to process through, or subjects that we want to follow up more deeply on. And so since this is a long process, this is just the kickoff. We want to have a parking lot to capture some of those things. So I think Diane had said she was going to man that as the timekeeper. We don't have an official note taker, but she's on that for us.
Happy to help.
So if we say, put it in the parking lot, that means we'll get back to it and it's not getting lost. And we have that document to refer to. So our objectives today: provide time for the Leadership Council to guide the school board through their FY21 budget proposal in 3 detailed work sessions. And then equally importantly, develop budget talking points and critical messages to be shared with our community. This is for the workshop as a whole. So you'll see in the agenda that we're starting off today's session and we're going to end it and we're going to say, stay tuned, tune in for the next session. And then in the second session, same thing, tune in for the next session. And then at the end of session 3 is where we'll stop and ponder and start building a list of talking points that we think are critical communication pieces. That'll help the finance committee, it'll help the communications committee, and it will help all of us to be advocating with some really clear messages about this budget. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. Diane, I have one question about how the presenters get pulled in. What's the tech piece on that?
Yep. So we can promote any of the attendees to become panelists during the time that they are. In thinking this whole format through, we felt like that made better sense than having every member of the Leadership Council be like a half-inch box for the entire budget workshop. So we'll bring people in fluidly in and out We did it last evening at the board meeting and it seemed to work okay.
Yeah, that did.
Unless anyone has a reason why they feel that doesn't work.
And so you can see all the attendees as the host,
Right.
and you can click on them and change their status. Because yeah, I did that transition last night from the other side, and I thought that worked really well.
Mhm.
I got to change my status, and it was exciting. All right, so how's everybody doing on the process before we dive into the content? Okay. All right. So from the outside, we might have Q&A, and I'll rely on Diane for my part to keep an eye on that piece. And then I can switch over once I stop being a presenter here and start just following along. So the first part of our conversation is going to be about the budget book, because again, even though it's a virtual book for most of us, it is kind of our grounding document. And a lot of time and energy has been put into that by the leadership team to make it a useful document for anyone on the outside, really, for the board, of course, being deeply involved, but also for the council and for any citizen that wants to take the time to read through it. We did try to scale down the budget book somewhat this year. We had started with nothing and built it into a magnificent novel with 100 pages. And then we sort of thought it was getting a little too full and a little too unfocused. So this year's budget book tries to keep focus just on the material that impacts our budget proposals. We do get a little bit excited sometimes and put some good stuff in there because we want you to know it. But most of what's in the budget book is related to budget resources. The first part of the budget book, the superintendent's introduction, and the 5 pages of budget summary give you a really good entry point to the major themes in the basic budget data. And it has just occurred to me that I should be sharing the presentation because I'm the sharer. Better late than ever, right? Okay. So I'm going to take one step back because I wasn't in my slides and now I'm back there, and I realized that I was going to share with the public the fact that we've already spent an awful lot of time developing this budget. And as you can see on the slide, we've been at this since December, where the leadership team and the central office leadership team got started on salary and benefit projections. What are the big pieces, challenges that we're going to be facing in the coming year? What are the goals that we're trying to achieve? And we also held staff budget listening sessions, which means that Sandy and I and a number of board members went out to the schools and sat around in their teachers' rooms and their libraries and any place that we could get underfoot and get some feedback directly from the staff. And that was really very interesting, particularly being Sandy's first year in the district. I think it was kind of eye-opening for him. But also I think, you know, Sandy was saying it's not, none of this stuff is strange. You know, if you're in education, we all face a lot of the same challenges. In January, we went through some more in-depth data reviews, as well as an individual line-by-line review by each department head and building principal to scrub the budget lines and get ourselves situated with what we would call a level services budget, which is a budget that doesn't introduce anything new, but it continues the appropriate programming for our students. The last piece in January was the introduction of new proposals, which are proposals from the leadership team to add to the budget to address upcoming challenges. And you'll see as we look through here that our focus there was mostly on increasing enrollment and on special services needs. In February and March, we continued the prioritization of those proposals with a multi-stage process with the leadership team, finished up the budget book, and then we did have a nice meeting with the finance committee. We haven't had a lot of time to connect with them as much as we thought we would because the world changed, but that'll be ongoing as well. All right, now I'm supposed to be orienting you on the budget book on this slide. So following my own orders, I think that the beginning part of the budget book is a really great summary for folks that are just interested in the high level stuff. I would want to read every page, and I would want to look at all the cool pictures and see what fun things that we're doing in our schools. But if you really just want to know what the heck is going on in the school budget and you want to read 20 pages and not 50 pages, you can look at the superintendent's introduction, which gives you an overview of the budget drivers, the challenges, and the highlights in our budget. The fact that we've been focusing on enrollment and student needs, that shouldn't really come as much of a surprise to folks because it's the same theme that we faced last year and really even the year before. But the budget book will tell you what I just went through about how the budget was developed. It will talk a little bit about enrollment and class size, and it has some charts and data in there about why we think we need to add classrooms and classroom teachers in the coming year. It talks a little bit about items in motion. We had a nice long conversation about being minimum receivers last night and how we do our revenue picture with the state, and that's in the book as well. Some of that is. Items in motion is the label that we put on the situation where we enter into a first reading of a budget each year without all the information that we really need to know what we need for next year. I think that was kind of a tortured sentence. But point being that when we go out with a budget the first week of April, we don't necessarily know all the factors that are going to play into our costs for the coming year. It's still a bit early, remembering that the fiscal year then starts in July and doesn't end until the following June. So a lot of things can happen during that time. Personnel costs, I think you all know, this year it makes up 79.5% of the school budget. So we're just under 80% of our budget, which is pretty staggering when you think about different kinds of businesses that are out there and what they may have in their budgets. And schools are people businesses. School departments exist and run and thrive and survive because of their people. So basically 80% of our budget is people. Items in motion are things like anthem rates, anthem health insurance rates, dental insurance rates, property casualty insurance rates. All of those things are being decided right now, but they're not finalized. So when we put the budget book out, we don't necessarily know all the answers, but by the time we get to second reading, then we do know those answers. Finance committee review is really important, helps us figure out how to prioritize our priorities, if you will. It helps us interface with the council and the community and figure out where we stand in terms of where a budget's going to land at second reading. And of course, with the input from the town, we get to that bottom line that's going to help us actually move forward and put the correct proposal from the school board into second reading and a vote. So I would encourage folks to take a look at the intro and the summary charts that are in the first section of the budget book. On the items in motion, just one really quick point, which I'm pretty excited about. We got our anthem rates yesterday, and we got our Delta rates, Delta Dental, yesterday. And so they're not included in these numbers, but I'm hoping to be able to crunch some numbers this weekend and update our salary and benefit projections so that we can bring this number down before we actually do our first reading. I think I can accomplish that. Anthem rates, I budgeted at 6% increase, which was based on Anthem's notice to us that that would be the top level of increase that any district would receive. And we got that notice a few weeks ago. Yesterday, we found out that we were going to be having a 1.75% increase, which is absolutely awesome. I see April's happy face. Yeah, that's massive. I mean, that can reduce our budget ask because we're such a big organization, because health insurance is so expensive. That can reduce our current budget ask by about $250,000. So that's a nice chunk. Delta Dental told us yesterday as well, we had budgeted at 4%, and that's going to be 3.35%. Dental is much less expensive. It's a small piece of money, but the direction is correct, and we'll take that. So I'm hoping to be able to, as I said, run those numbers through. We have a lot of different benefit lines in the budget, so I have to actually process through and make adjustments to the line items. But I'm hopeful that I can pull that off before we have first reading, so we can have a more accurate number and a lower number to go out with. So this slide is what the budget looks like. Let me get my cursor out of the way here. What the budget looks like for first reading. And again, I just said to you that I'm going to change this because of the fact that we've got new numbers for Anthem and Delta. But this chart shows you the school budget as a whole. The general fund operating budget, the first line here, is where we spend most of our attention on these workshop days. This is where we're going to go through, excuse me, this is where we're going to go through the departments. This is the portion of our budget that goes to public referendum. So this is obviously the portion that the public is going to pay the most attention to. Adult education and school nutrition, they're broken out here. They're considered separate funds, and they're included in the budget book. They'll be on page 56. It's a little separate section. And in session 3, we'll be talking about those departments. Each of those funds, you can see, has some support from the tax dollars. So they do, from local taxes, so they do impact the change in our tax request. Not shown here is the capital budget, which we talk about, I think, on day 2. It's in the budget book starting on page 51. And because the town decides what portion of the town and school capital budget would be funded by tax dollars and what portion would be bonded or other funding sources, we don't include that because we don't really know what the tax request impact is of that. That's something that the town decides. So what this shows you is that the increase in our total education budget is 6.12% right now. And the tax request to the town, after we apply all of the non-tax revenues, the bulk of this line, the increase being an increase in state subsidy, we get to a 5.79% increase in our tax request. And this is where we remind everybody that the tax request from the school department is not the increase in taxes to the citizens of Scarborough. It's filtered through the entire municipal budget. There's a difference in valuation applied, and the combination at the bottom line of that is what actually creates the projected tax rate. So I think that's pretty much the end of my segment here. If there are questions about this piece, I guess I would also just call your attention to, in the superintendent's introduction, we have the, it's kind of like the one pager that we did last year that has, this budget allows us to, and then a bunch of blocks on one side that says, these are the things we can accomplish with the funding that's provided to us in this budget, and then unmet needs on the other side. And so that I think was a very effective tool last year for people to see what was included in the budget. And I think, you know, some of the things we thought about were, we wanted to have positive and celebratory and exciting reasons for people to want to come out and vote for the school budget. Here are all the cool things that we can do if you all give us these resources. The unmet needs side is to remind people that we didn't ask for everything that we possibly could have asked for, and that there are some needs that we've decided to defer, or you may hear about them later, or we've prioritized them at a lower level. And that's also something that we've represented in the budget priorities investment proposals list. So that's a useful thing. And I think that's something that we'll probably pull out in the communications and finance committees to use as a document for the public. All right. I think it's time for someone else besides me to talk.
Okay, so Kate, do you want me to move on with these?
Let's go back here for a second here. Make sure we didn't miss anything. Yeah, I think I've talked enough. I think I've probably had more than my amount of time, huh? What time is it? Yep. I had 3 extra minutes. So Sandy, I think it's time for us to bring in somebody from K2.
All righty.
I feel like I'm on The Price is Right. Come on down. Not that I'm watching daytime television right now or anything. My husband watches it.
And if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yeah,
There she is.
Hello.
hello.
Well, we can unmute ourselves.
Yeah, can you hear me too?
Okay,
K2 primary schools.
here we are.
You see the slide okay?
We can. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So, and we watched last night, so it was that was helpful as well. So we're going to start off with our new proposals. And I know that we're entering into a difficult landscape, right, with COVID-19. But one of the things that isn't going to change is kids are still going to come. And the best fit model is showing us that 70 to 75 new students are going to come into our phase. And my dog is going to bark, so just ignore him. He's very upset about it. So, and what that looks like across the phase is, you know, an additional classroom at Blue Point and Pleasant Hill, and 2 additional classrooms at 8 Corners. And as we know, the best fit model has been pretty right on the money. So as of this morning, K registration numbers, Blue Point has 73 kindergartners registered, 8 Corners has 90, and Pleasant Hill has 76. And that's indeed robust for this time in the spring. We haven't had kindergarten information night, and of course that's going to look a little different this year potentially. We typically get kindergartners register over the summer, so we're looking at needing 4 additional teachers for our K2 classrooms. And with those come classroom supplies. These are classrooms that don't exist and they need stuff. So there's a cost associated with those. So I know that's not really a surprise to anybody. This is something we've talked about. There's a building steering committee. We know that K2 is growing. We know that that's an issue. So that's the ask on the table due to our growing enrollment. Another piece, due to significant needs at K2, is our behavior specialists. And what was originally on the table was a K2 behavior specialist or some kind of intervention teacher for each building. And what we ended up doing was working with special ed to combine our wants and needs, and coming up with a shared model, which is actually going to save money. So you'll hear from Allison as well on this one. And using a position we already have. We already have a behavior specialist that's funded through special education. And so we're asking for 2 behavior specialists and using the one that we already have. So she will end up in one building, and we will hire 2 more and end up with 1 in each building to really better serve the kids that we have, and not have a person running between 3 buildings, because it has become just too much of a load for her. And right now she is serving only special ed, and the load has become too large. And what we really want is for there to be capacity for special ed and regular ed. Because what we're finding is there are kids that come in, they don't have, a diagnosis, and kids at this age, their behavior is externalized. I mean, that's the developmental hallmark of this age, right? When they're struggling, their behavior is communication to tell us that there's a problem. And we need someone to help us to decode that behavior and figure out how do we support this child. And one of those people, on top of possibly, the social worker, and eventually we may get to the school psychologist, but sometimes that person in between is a behavior specialist who can really help break that down. And we just don't have enough of that professional on board at this level to really figure that out. And these kids don't all have a diagnosis, and they don't all need one, but they all need some help getting to the point where they can access school. So that is a real need at this level. These kids deserve a chance to kind of get some plans in place so they can access school better, and to do it safely. And right now we're just band-aiding a lot of problems, and so we really need some help in that area. And to that end, the last request is for more support staff. We have more kids, and so we need more adults. And a building ed tech in each building really isn't going to do it, but it's a step in the right direction. Our building ed techs, cover recess. Right now we are struggling. I wish we were having recess. I really do. But we're struggling to cover what we're doing right now. We're struggling to cover teachers to attend meetings. We're really struggling to provide support for the number of kids and meetings and activities that we're doing with the enrollment that we have right now. So, and looking at having additional students come into the building, we really need an additional adult in the building to safely do those activities. So, to have a safe and inclusive school, you need to have enough adults to run that school. So I will allow my esteemed colleagues to jump in with anything that I forgot. We will move on to the next slide if not.
No, I think you, go ahead. I was going to say, I think you covered it really well. And I think, just to expand on the 4 classroom teacher positions, the 2 at 8 corners, I currently have 5 kindergarten sections and only 4 first grade and 4 second grade. And I'm anticipating my current first grade class is at 81 kids. So that's where the 4th teacher comes in, is the potential of that second grade needing a 5th section as well, and not having the opportunity to go so gradually, as adding a 5th kindergartner one year, a 5th first grade the next year, and then a 5th second grade. So it isn't all kindergarten kids, they're spread around. So I just, wanted to make sure you understood that piece of the enrollment puzzle.
Thank you.
I thought I'd just throw in there, in our conversations, we've talked about enrollment across the K2s, and the numbers that Kelly just gave us for K registration are pretty inspiring. I'm not sure what the word is exactly. Terrifying. But we have said all through our K2 conversations that we're following enrollment. So last year, you may recall that there was a teacher, a classroom teacher, 3 classroom teachers for 3 schools. And we sort of thought that it was going to be 3 classroom teachers, 1 at each neighborhood school. And it turned out that this year we actually deployed 2 teachers at 8 Corners, 1 at Pleasant Hill and none at Blue Point. So, we're very cognizant that these enrollment shifts may happen in different ways. But it looks like it really is hitting across the community pretty much everywhere right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I still have a couple more slides. Would you like us to continue?
Onward.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. So when we think about the return on investment at the K2 level, we feel strongly that there's a lot to be proud of. K2 has been and continues to be really outstanding at maximizing our resources. We have historically only asked for what we absolutely need, and we're continuing to do so. As we have experienced the growth in our numbers over the past few years, we've also been practicing what we preach, which is to adopt a growth mindset. And we are continually adjusting and pivoting and responding to our students and families and staff in a way that really, we hope, supports everyone to the best of our ability. We're actually a very nimble group, and despite the anxiety and fears that have been expressed in a rather public way, we think that the past few weeks especially is solid proof that our K2 staff really should be applauded. We have been held to the same expectations as our other phase levels of meeting the distance learning demands. And in addition, what the public doesn't see is that behind the scenes, we have been rapidly consolidating our K2 phase. Our model of 3 buildings and 1 school has always been one of collaboration, but this pandemic and crisis teaching, if you will, requires us to be even more united in our approach. And that leads us to our applause of our instructional coaching model. We feel like this is a great opportunity to make sure that everyone hears us fully recognize the efforts that our instructional coaches have put in to our leadership team, and the energy and time that they're giving to our teachers across 3 buildings. They make sure that we're connected in our curriculum and professional development, and we continue to need those coaches to work in partnership with us. And lastly, our K2 social work, as Kelly explained, is absolutely being accessed at full capacity across our phase level. We don't know what this experience of distance learning and crisis across the world is going to do for our kids and our families. We already had great need before we entered into this experience. So we can only guesstimate that that need will stay the same, if not increase dramatically. So I just want to make sure that everyone hears loud and clear that we are extremely proud of what we do at K2, and we will continue to work harder than we have ever worked to make sure that the students and families at our phase level get the best of us.
Thank you.
All right, so unmet needs. In our original budget to the Leadership Council, we had also asked for additional school leadership positions. We currently have one lead teacher position in each building. And what we have found, especially in the last 3 weeks, is that is not enough support to go around. We really need lead teachers, more lead teacher positions to help the administration, to help our teachers, to help our kids. It's just a growing need. And so that was something that did not rise to the level of being in this year's budget. We also need additional space in the sense of not just classrooms. You can put as many classroom portables as you can fit on our property, but we are continually trying to figure out how to have adequate amount of gym and PE time while serving lunch, or having art and music not in a classroom. So we are balancing those needs at least 2 of the 3 schools, and will soon be at all 3 schools balancing those needs. So it's just really difficult to meet all the kids' needs in an equitable way across 3 buildings when art is in a classroom for some classes, but in an art room for others. Music is, in a classroom where there's not as much space to move and dance, and to haul 15 xylophones down the hall doesn't make it easy, so she does something else. This compromises the integrity of the programming and compromises what the classroom teacher can do while their students are in music class, because they're in her classroom and she can't get ready for the next section of the day, or take a minute to organize things and clean the tables and all those kinds of things that need to happen when kids go down the hall to music, because they're not going down the hall. So those kinds of things continue to keep us up at night and try to figure out a schedule that's going to continue to provide the high quality of education that we've been giving kids in an equitable way across 3 buildings. We also had asked for a dedicated K2 librarian. Right now we have 1 librarian across 4 schools. We see this librarian for about half a day in each of our small buildings. She is phenomenal, she is awesome, but she is only 1 person, and that is a lot of kids and a lot of teachers and a lot of books and a lot of space and distance for her to travel in a week to adequately do her job. And having a dedicated K2 librarian would allow us to offer richer programming, more support for teachers, more opportunities for kids, and a wider variety of things through the Learning Commons, and grow our Learning Commons model and not just have libraries.
So, Anne, if you could wrap up.
Oh, sure. Sure. And the last thing that was unmet is additional support staff. Our building secretaries are being the nurse, the door manager, and 1,000 other things all at one time. Obviously not right this minute, but in general. And so we just really need additional help with managing the schools as they grow. And I will leave it with that.
Thank you very much, Anne.
Welcome.
Thanks, ladies. So we won't do questions yet. I'm hoping that people are taking notes and holding on to their thoughts and wonders. And we're going to scroll right into Wentworth School. Since I took more than my share of time, now everybody else has to go fast.
We're just waiting for Kelly to come on board. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, hang on.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hi.
Ellie.
Hi, great to see you. All right, my screen just went a little weird since I just joined. Let me see here if I can. Here. Okay, there we go. Hi, thank you. I know you guys had a long night last night, and so I appreciate you being here with us today to hear about our really hard budget work. It would be a little tone deaf to not acknowledge that we're obviously in a really different place than we were when we started this process, but even so, really important to hear about our schools and the needs that will continue to exist when we get back to school. So lots to be proud of at Wentworth School. So last year we had a very modest budget increase at Wentworth. Really, we just added $5,600 to our operating budget in terms of new investments, like specifically for new investments. And I feel like that was just such a huge return on investment. So that was in response to teacher voice in order to provide some discretionary funds for instructional supplies. 52 out of 56 teachers accessed the $100, just like such a small drop in the bucket. But it really went a long way. So they were able to purchase supplies like journals, social and emotional learning tools, craft supplies, books for their libraries, science projects, and just affording that professional discretion to respond to their students' needs and to respond to their passions resulted in a much more rich academic program for our students. So they were able to really reach their students in some unique ways, and it was fun to hear what things they chose and how the kids responded. So that was wonderful. So that was really our one new investment last year. But with the budget FY19, we were also able to maintain our class sizes, which is always, a huge goal and a challenge that my K2 colleagues are facing for next year. So this current year, we were able to do that without an investment of more teachers and more staff. And then a couple of things that I'd be remiss to not mention in terms of return on investment, though it didn't impact the overall budget. We were able to just creatively fund a school garden facilitator. And so that was really an incredible collaboration between reallocating some curriculum monies and reallocating some of my local Wentworth School contracted services money and collaborating with Todd and facilities. So we were able to contract somebody for 2 days a week for 6 weeks in the fall. And we were hoping for some time in the spring, but it's not looking like that's in the cards at this moment. And this really impacted our students greatly. So what happened in having a school garden facilitator was that more students were able to access our school garden, which is day by day really turning into an outdoor learning lab. So what was happening previously was that teachers who were comfortable teaching in the garden and comfortable teaching in that way and had those skills and background were bringing their students to access the garden, and it wasn't equitable. So adding this resource to support teachers increased, I think in previous years we had 4 or 5 classes accessing the garden, and in this fall we had 23 classes. So additionally, kids could access at recess. So just a really wonderful addition to our wonderful campus. So that's been really exciting to see grow. Kate, I think I'll move on to the next slide, even though I could talk a lot more about exciting things that are happening. Is that the next one? Great.
Are you seeing that okay, Cal?
Yep. So the FY21 budget allows us to, we're in a different place than our K2 colleagues. So we're actually hitting a 2-year lull in enrollment at Wentworth before it climbs back up. So due to shifting enrollment and a teacher retirement, Wentworth is proposing, so because we're not going to need to refill that one FTE teacher, we are going to reduce by one classroom teacher for next year, actually for the next 2 years, before enrollment starts to climb back up. I'm proposing that we use 1/2 of that. So we're kind of giving back $81,000, the cost, the full cost that we're using for one FTE. And we're requesting that 1/2 of that be used to meet some significant needs that we have. So for the low price of actually a budget decrease overall, we'd like to use 0.2 of that money to support a teacher leader in providing support for 504 meetings. So that would be a projected cost of like $16,200. There's currently 56 students on 504 plans at Wentworth School, which is an accommodation plan for students with disabilities. And this role would help us to provide and ensure training and consistency of procedures for 504 case managers. The person in this role would be able to help chair annual meetings in consultation with the assistant principal. At this time, Mr. Stoner is really taking on the lion's share of this work, and it's at the expense of other work. So the tricky part at Wentworth is that 3 small schools feed into Wentworth. So it's like 3 principals feeding to an assistant principal and a principal. And then that feeds to the middle school where there's a principal and assistant principal. And then they have an athletic director and someone who's helping with 504s and student behaviors as well. So we're kind of in a leadership dip at the intermediate phase and working really hard to do all of the things that need to happen at a large school. So Section 504 is an unfunded mandate, and it has just grown and grown and grown, and we need some support in that. The other portion of this request would be to provide an instructional coach for science and social studies. So what this would look like is just providing some release time for a teacher leader to explore our these curriculum areas. We are in desperate need of an update. Wentworth currently does not have an instructional coach for science and social studies, and both of these curriculum areas are in desperate need of updated materials, resources, goals, and objectives. So we have a really incredible opportunity for integration with our school garden, and the vision is for this person to create opportunities for integration with the existing resources that we've already invested in. And then the final portion of the money from that 0.5 FTE is we're hoping to allocate for a stipend position for someone to support the after school clubs and activities. We have, I don't have my list right in front of me. I think we have 16 after school clubs. Obviously, we're really missing that right now. And there is an incredible amount of work that goes into hiring qualified advisors, ensuring student safety at pickup, coordinating attendance, coordinating training for the advisors. You'll see on the screen, that's one of my favorite pictures, is the kids doing the Wentworth School news on the green screen. And then at the bottom, our kids, we have a ukulele troupe. And so we have these wonderful, rich activities for students, but it doesn't come without a lot of work and supervision. And so for a small investment would go a long way for student safety and fidelity of these programs that we offer our students. And I just heard your buzzer, Diane, so I'll move on to my last slide.
Thank you.
Okay, so similarly, I mean, I don't need to speak to this in much detail because the first one, K2 did a great job. Our wonderful librarian is shared across 4 buildings. So we really need a dedicated Wentworth School librarian. So she's 4 buildings, 6 grades, 1,300 students, 200 staff. I don't even know how large the collection is across all of the phases. Again, she's amazing, but she's stretched very thin. And so the next is really what we've advocated for in this budget is a step toward a longer range plan for support for 504 co-curricular activities and the work that we're doing. We're getting it accomplished, but it's at the expense of other important work. Same for the science coach. 1 period of release time per day would just allow this person to be a curriculum leader and a researcher. This person would not be in classrooms coaching teachers. That's part of a longer term goal for us. And then finally, we've been able to make some incremental increases in essential curriculum funding, but parents still contribute to field trips, and guest speakers and authors are still creatively funded by the book fair and Clink and PTA fundraising, and basic supplies are still provided by families. So and this year we even made some shifts to fund classroom library investments locally so that central office could use monies available to support other critical curriculum needs. So I think that there are still essential curriculum pieces that require more support and are unmet needs at this time. So I will stop there. Thank you so much for your time and support. And I think we go to questions.
Yes, we do. Let me make sure I'm not muted here.
Oh, you're on, Kate.
Oh, good. Lovely. So we're going to do questions. I did want to just mention to folks that we are kind of rushing through a little bit. You know, we're not actually spending a lot less time than we would have under normal circumstances. But I do want to say to folks that there's a lot of backup material and a lot more detail to some of these things that you're hearing in the budget book. So for example, in Kelly's section, she's got a list of all the clubs and she's got some more details about the asks that are in her budget and some supporting data for those. So if you're looking for more in-depth information than you can get in a quick 10-minute presentation, then that's a great place to go.
Thank you, Kate.
So let's open this up to wonderings and questions. And should we pull up our document, or is everybody working in the same one, or are people making their own copies? Let's see.
While you pull that up, Kate, for folks on the attendee side, if you have a question that you want asked, if you could put that in the Q&A box, that's how we worked it last night during the meeting. And it worked really well as far as being able to make sure that we got your questions asked as well as the questions that the board members had.
So Sandy, do you want to reach out and see who's got questions here? And I'm going to go see if I can find anything in our noticings bucket.
Okay.
All right. So this tool looks pretty peaceful.
So I don't have the hand raising capability because I think I'm the co-host, but I do have a question. I don't want to jump ahead of anybody though, but I didn't see any hands raised. So
go for it, Sarah.
I guess just back to the K2 teachers. You, Kelly, you had mentioned the kindergarten registration numbers were high this year compared to last year. Can you just comment on, I don't know if you have this data, like how much higher they are in terms of percentage wise that from what we're seeing in past years, and what sort of indicator that gives us what enrollment will be in the fall?
I can find out for you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think this came up, I think, at our workshop with town hall, and why I'm asking is because the main indicator that we're using is the study that Rebecca did, but I think the kindergarten registration is also a good indicator for us. We can have those two data. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sarah, this is
it'll be
Amber. So
interesting.
I do think that they're not significantly higher from last year from this current kindergarten class. I think this current kindergarten class is significantly larger than our first grade class, and I think they're about on par with that.
So in regards to moving ahead, I'm just going to add in our parking lot that one of the things that we're going to want to do is to continue to monitor what those kindergarten registration numbers are closely. Obviously, the positions that are built into the budget are based on the overall model, but we certainly wouldn't be looking to hire teachers if those numbers don't end up coming to fruition.
Good.
Leanne has just asked me to read out Don's question, so I'll go ahead and do that. Says good news on the healthcare savings. And I noticed some small measures to reduce costs at Wentworth, so virtual thumbs up for that. Are there any large austerity measures being contemplated? The first past numbers follow pretty much the joint resolution guidelines and do not reflect that the world has changed. The town is considering several, but we're a smaller piece of the pie. Thanks, Don. I think I can comment on this, and then I don't know if you want to as well. We had a joint meeting with town council it was last week or before now. We agreed that for the first reading, our goals were going to remain the same. So we're going to continue to build the budget for what we need and what the leadership council is telling us that they need to fund the schools for next year. After first budget, we'll certainly be taking into consideration how it has changed and what impacts that has on our community members, on our tax base, et cetera. But the goals for first reading have not changed. So for now, Dawn, we're going to continue to proceed as planned. Is there anything you want to add to that, or April or Alicia?
I think I would say just super high level that when we build our budget, and we can refer back to the document that we used at our finance committee meeting earlier this week, or whenever the heck that was. We do build it in terms of priorities. We build it in terms of, here's what level services looks like. Here's what it looks like if we reduce some positions and we get to the rock bottom level that we could continue with and provide what we're currently doing. And then here's what we need to add in order to be responsive to things like enrollment and the special needs of students. So we have a structure of development of our budget that then allows us to go back and say, okay, here are the things that we've got in our budget. Where do we go first if we need to remove something from our budget?
And then I don't know who this is for, but his second question was, as a follow-up, what is the follow-up impact of the teacher's contract?
Kind of a broad question. I guess I'll answer it by saying that the budget proposal that's on the table right now assumes that the contract that is currently agreed to by the negotiations team does go through. That contract hasn't been ratified by the teacher union membership because they had to all go home unexpectedly. So I think they're working on that piece of the process. But we have, from that tentative agreement, we have the budget, the contract salary tables for the next 3 years. And so that's what we've used in our estimates. I'm not sure if that's the answer to the question. Are there any other questions from on the table here. Oh, I can see.
Oh yeah, April has one. I'm sorry, I was muted and talking away. Sorry.
That's okay. Mine isn't so much a question as a comment to the K2 request. When we went to the budget info sessions with the staff, we heard across the board that they need more support staff. That was a theme in every building that we went in. And so I think I want to just say, you know, to speak to that, and I think Kelly did a great job speaking to that. One of our challenges maybe, and we can put this on the working document, is going to be really communicating to the community why those support staff are needed. And it's not just the addition of teachers. Obviously, though, that's an important ask as well. But I would like to kind of see us find a way to separate the requests so that we can make sure that people understand what roles that we're really asking for. Because it's one thing to be a kindergarten teacher and to have a large class size. It's another thing to sit and listen to those kindergarten teachers tell you that they literally cannot meet the needs of the kids in their room without additional support staff. And so I think we really need to find a way to separate those two requests and make sure that the community understands that those are both independent asks, but they're really, really important.
Other wonderings or questions?
There was one other question. Leanne, I don't know if you want to answer this, from Betsy Gleistein. What are the salary increases based on the contract percentage-wise overall?
Sure, I can answer that. And that's something, unfortunately, we would not be able to answer at this time. We are still in the process of the negotiations until that contract is ratified.
Okay.
And that's legally, right? That you can't release that.
That is a legal reason.
And there's
that clarification.
Comment that came in from Dawn. Says, thanks, Sarah and Kate. What's the percentage increase and amount impact for the proposed teacher's contract? So I guess just to take that falls in line with what Leanne just said. And then his other comment, I understand this, but the joint resolution guidelines had significant caveat language for emergency situations intended to reflect that financial reality. I don't see these numbers delivering a greater than 10% rate. There's always pressure for a 0% rate.
Sarah, you kind of cut out on your audio a little bit there. I'm going to just pop this question open here.
Okay. It's actually not a question, Kate. It's just a comment.
It's a comment. Okay.
Well, I mean, his comment is not, as I understand, consistent with the agreement that the collective finance committees had about our goal. Right? I mean, wasn't the directive, the agreement with town council's finance committee that the school was asked to develop a 6% or less increase, Kate?
In the net budget, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think, you know, not to cut anybody off, but maybe in the interest of time, we should go back and focus on what asks we might have of the Wentworth School, and then we can address some of the more general questions about the process outside of this very quick workshop.
Yes.
I would agree with that, Kate. I think next Wednesday night would be the time to have that conversation. And we really should be hearing what are the needs of our school at this point. So yeah, let's continue with this piece.
So do we have questions around Wentworth School? A lot of bang for little buck there, so kind of nice. Good job, Kelly. So Sandy, do you think it's appropriate for us to do our break now? Do we have, I don't want to cut anybody off who's thinking or we're trying to frame a question.
I think that would be fine. What do you think? 5 minutes? 10 minutes?
Well, we had 10 minutes built in. Maybe if we just do a stretch, we'll be running a little bit over. But I kind of anticipated that on this first round. We were trying to get our feet under us with all the tech stuff. Do people want to take 10 or we could split the difference and say we'll take 8 minutes and come back at 10 o'clock?
That sounds good.
All right, so this is an 8-minute break, even though it says a 10-minute break. It's a lie.
We'll be back at 10.
Back at 10. Are we back yet? Who's with us?
I say let's do it.
I'm here. Sandy.
Everybody had a relaxing super break. That's all you get. Sorry, 8 minutes. That's it. Sandy, do you want to pull up our next set of folks here? I guess we're ready for some friends from the middle school, maybe.
Right. So, Kathy, are you around?
Oh, let me promote her. Sorry.
Yeah, judging from the video, Diane got kidnapped. I lost my video, so you can't see my pretty face, but I'm still here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey.
Great. Hi, good to see everyone. I feel like I've been with you for hours, but haven't had a chance to say hi.
You've been there, but we haven't seen you yet. So we've got your slide up here. I think you've been probably following along, and we'll just let you take the floor, huh?
Okay. I want to start. Yeah.
Before you start, I apologize. I probably should have said this before. For the folks who are asking questions as attendees, if we can keep the questions specific to the phase level, try to consider this to be very similar to the department sessions that come up in front of council. We'd really like to focus the questions to all the hard work that each one of the phase levels have done, and in this case, all the work that Kathy and her team has done to getting us to this presentation. Thanks.
Okay, you guys ready?
Yes.
I want to just start by saying how proud I am of the middle school staff and all the work that they're doing for students and each other during this distance learning time. So on our return on investments for last year, we had some safety updates. We increased our camera coverage, addition of 4 cameras within the school, collaborated with the community, public safety partners with ongoing meetings, and then created efficiencies for our lockdowns where our doors will automatically close. And then with building updates, resurfaced the handicap accessible ramp for the main building and reconfigured the handicap access pathway to the portables. And then our academic center teacher has been an ed tech in the past. And so this year's budget allowed us to replace our academic center ed tech position with a teacher position. That allowed us to expand student services by enhancing that curriculum for academic center and developing curriculum for a new connections class, and both are tier 2 intervention classes. So this new teacher teaches both of these courses. The academic center students are provided academic coaching. The goal of the process is to empower the student to identify his or her own strengths and resources, think about how to solve problems and meet goals, build skills, develop a positive self-image, and to lay a foundation of long-term success. The connections class is for students experiencing social and emotional issues. And we know that we have seen an increase in this. The class focuses on building positive peer and adult relationships, building self-confidence and self-efficacy, and learning strategies for regulating emotions and dealing with stress and anxiety. And during this distance learning time, our academic center teacher continues to be very important in supporting her students. She touches base with them several times a week and holds Google Meets meetings in order to help still support students in these areas. So I do want to share some data from first semester. So the connections class, there were 12 students who attended the class in group sizes of about 2 to 3. And At the beginning of the semester and the end, they were given 2 assessments, strengths and difficulties questionnaire, and then a pessimism, optimism, self-rating scale. So at the end of the semester, many students reported an improvement in their perception of any problems they were facing, and they found the class helpful. So 11 out of the 12 students saw an increase in their optimism score, with some increases being significant. And I do want to share some of the quotes that they wrote on their open-ended response questionnaire. So I learned how to be an optimistic thinker and how to stop freaking out over small things. I learned how to be mindful, grateful, and to think before I act. I learned how to be more happy. Several students reported that it was beneficial and interesting for them to learn how their brains work. And 2 students reported that everything was their favorite part of the class, and another mentioned that the class was their favorite part of the day. So I am ready for slide 2. So this F21 budget allows for us to maintain current levels of programming and class size. And the 3 clubs that we're asking for you to invest in are part of the athletics and activities budget, but I wanted to highlight them in our middle school portion of the presentation. So the Unified Club has been funded to date through a grant from the Special Olympics of Maine. And the advisors of the Lego Robotics Club and the Studio Art Club have been volunteering their time. Unified Club currently has 48 students participating. They meet weekly to promote inclusion, unity, and whole school engagement among the students through a variety of activities. And the club is open to students in grades 6 through 8. The Lego Robotics Club, there are currently 25 students are participating, and 10 are on a waiting list. So the Lego Robotics Club is an opportunity to explore the world of robotics using Legos as building blocks. Students collaborate in teams to construct robots, learn to program in order to make them move, and compete in challenges to improve their understanding of robotics. And then our Studio Art Club currently has 32 students participating. And this is an opportunity to use open studio time in a supportive and safe environment where exploration and creativity are encouraged. This club provides space and material access that students mostly don't have in their homes. So you might see students using clay on the pottery wheel, students painting or using chalk. And then keep in mind that extracurricular activities provide a channel for reinforcing the lessons learned in the classroom, offering students the opportunity to apply academic skills in a real-world context and are considered part of a well-rounded education. Research suggests that participation in extracurricular activities may increase students' sense of engagement or attachment to their school, and thereby decrease the likelihood of school failure and dropping out, which is research we found in our dropout prevention committee. And then if participation in extracurricular activities can lead to success in school, then the availability of these activities to students of all backgrounds becomes an important equity issue. I am ready for slide 3. So this is not in the budget book, but it is continuing to be an unmet need. And, you know, as you know, we're still examining our long range facilities plan for the middle school to get all of the students under one facility. And right now we have 243 sixth graders receiving their core instruction in the portables. I am all done.
Thank you, Kathy. That's awesome. We're going to go to the high school section, and then we're going to come back around and have some Q&A here. So let's see if we can find Miss Ketch somewhere out there.
So there we go. Yep. So Sue, you're on mute right now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, Miss Ketch.
Well, thank you for including the high school in the budget process this morning. I too want to do a shout out to all the amazing high school staff that have pulled together so incredibly for this distance learning we're in now. I'm so proud of them. I can't even find words. They're just doing amazing work. But launching into the budget request for the high school, starting with our return on investments. Last year, we were very fortunate to get 3 needed positions for the high school, or to at least bring them to full time. First was a new social worker that we split budget-wise with the special ed department. And we've just been able to see great work happening there. The focus that we centered on for that new social worker was attendance and success at school. And our new social worker has just done amazing work. She's worked with the assistant principals weekly on attendance concerns and issues. We feel like we're being much more thorough on that work. She has done outreach with students that have difficulty with attendance. She has done numerous home visits. She has really put a plan in place, doing whatever is needed to do in order to make those kids more successful. And we are just finding great return on investment there. Our STEAM engineering teacher, as we know from the spring last year, when we offered more ability to teach more sections of STEM and engineering, that was met with great request by the students. We've really seen great work there. And if you remember back to our program of studies for this year, we're adding to some of the pathways in these areas due to that work. So we've had great success there. We're growing the program, and you'll hear more about that later. And career pathways, moving Christy from part-time focus to full-time focus. We are able to access many more opportunities with the business community to have students go on field trips. Town and Country Federal Credit Union, which already does a piece with us every fall with our seniors on personal finance and just thinking about their future financially. They came in and worked with our sophomore students who in the fall are taking economics, and did a workshop with them on economics. We've done more career talks with students held in our Learning Commons. She is really able to launch on many opportunities that come our way to just expose our students to more and more career options for them to explore, think about. So we're doing great work there. I'm just very proud of the work in all 3 of those areas. We did, celebrating success, redesign our advisory programs. That's meeting bi-monthly, and we have quarterly themes, and we've put a lot of focus on that this year as one of our 2 building goals. We do have increased communication opportunities this year. We did add quarterly student meetings and quarterly parent meetings, and we are getting newsletters out quarterly, all things that we're getting good feedback on. New course offerings, we continue to expand that program of studies to meet student interests and requests. And as you see in the FAST Fact, we are working to increase our connection with SMCC through their concurrent enrollment courses, which we plan to add another one next year, and the Spring Ahead program, which Tim Walker got some of our seniors started on this year, and that's been great. Next slide, please. This year's budget started back in August when the ILT team, the instructional leadership team, began talking about the overall need we have for more classrooms. Currently, we have 5 teachers that do not have a room. They include 2 full-time teachers. This year, it happens to be our STEM engineering teacher and a math teacher, and 3 part-time staff, French, Latin, and our adulting teacher. I do want to note that we have, when we opened in 2005, this current size of the building, we did have more classroom space at the time than we do now. District testing took over 2 classrooms for their offices, and we moved district testing here to this building back at that point in time. And also IT has taken a room for their work on the main floor. And so that is part of our space issue. But the ILT decided in the fall to really focus on limiting our operating budget as much as possible in order to have an ask for some classroom space. So in terms of staff requests for us, we are asking for an additional 0.25 in the social work line. And the reason we're asking for that is we would like some additional support for Mr. Applestein and Mr. Legage on the end of new referrals for 504. 2 school years ago, 17-18, we had 25 new referrals. Last year we had 25, and this year to date we have 19. There is just a lot of work to be done in that end, and we were hoping that if we had a little more time with social work, we could add to that need. Our other staff request was a 0.1 FTE for a dance teacher. We have students really asking to have another dance opportunity beyond the dance one, and we listen and hear their request, and we've asked for that. In terms of the operating budget, our overall request is about $15,000, which I find incredible in a building with 1,000 students and about 105 teachers. But really, each department sharpened their pencils and really tried to ask only for what they really felt. They were creative, they were thoughtful, they worked together, supported each other. We had 4 departments that actually reduced the request for next year, 3 departments that requested the same amount of money. 5 departments asked for small increases of less than $1,000, and 5 departments asked for increases at more than 1,000. And I just wanted to say that those larger requests are because we're rolling those new positions into our operating budget. So career pathways and adulting and science for the STEM engineering, some of those cost increases are, now that they're here, we found creative ways to fund them to get started this year, but we are rolling them into the operating budget. RSVP is another larger request, and that is our response to violence prevention, and that is with the Boys to Men. That is a training that came from that company at no cost, and this year there was a cost. So we do feel that's very important work, and we're rolling that into our operating budget. So, you know, again, I'm just so impressed with the work of the ILT to get the request down to that amount. our big request is, and we've purposely made the operating requests as minimal as we can because we know this CIP request is a large one. We are looking for 2 additional classroom spaces for people that are on the cart, especially we'll focus on our 2 full-time teachers getting a room. One will be a general classroom space and one will be a STEM engineering space. These spaces will be located beyond alternative ed in what used to be, when I started here, what used to be the industrial arts area. I want to thank the school. Kate and Todd have been fabulous about working with, we've been working with Harriman Associates to design a space that will meet these needs for these 2 classes. We are working very hard to pull the costs of that down as much as we can. We're really actually looking at this point to bring the cost. It'll pretty much give us the rooms and the basics there. We're not going to supply it with furniture and things like that at this point. We'll work on that along the way. You will hear more about this in the CIP request from Todd specifically, but I did want you to know that that is a request for us. Last slide. Unmet needs for us. We still do need a student services department head. That department has not had a department head for several years now, and we recognize that we feel that would be a good growth place for us. 504 support continues to be something that we focus on a lot. Jim Watson and Nate Terrio handle a lot of our IEP meetings along with Allison and Chris, and Mike and Greg are our 504 chairs, and there is work there that we could use. And of course, part of our request, but part not yet, would be the need for additional office and classroom space. We are addressing the classroom space need first with this year's requests. So I think that's everything I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Questions?
I don't see anything in Q&A at the moment. Should I flip out to the noticings and questionings? Is anybody using that that document, or are we just kind of working on our own scratch pads here?
I don't see any questions from the public.
Right.
Any questions from the board? Otherwise, we can move forward.
Just double check
I have-
this.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sue, you talked about needing extra classroom space. And I know my daughter actually had tech and engineering without a space. But I'm just wondering if, like, how did you decide to renovate that area into classrooms? As opposed to, it sounds like some of the district central office, like the departments are in your building.
Right.
Clarify that.
Sure. Years ago now, district testing was housed down in Wentworth. And when that renovation was finally ratified and moving toward that for the building phase, we were looking at where district testing could move. And at that time, it was decided that the best place for that was at the high school. They needed an operational place during that build. And so 2 of our classrooms were reconfigured and turned into district testing. And at that time, because of the expense to renovate those spaces for that need, the decision at the time was that that would be a permanent move to this building. We worked to find a spot where you'd be able to enter straight into the building and be right at district testing. And so that's the 2 spaces. And then also through time, IT has found that it's better to operate on the main floor with kids able to bring their laptops or teachers to go there if they need something fixed. And they've taken over one of what was originally a computer lab space in the library, but could serve as a teaching space, but it's been reconfigured for that use.
Okay. And
Just to clarify, Hillary, that district testing, that's the psychological examiners who do student testing, and they do it K-12, but we've built them that space so that people can come in from any phase level.
And the space that you're currently renovating, what, I forget what you said it used to be, but what is it being used for now? Is it just empty space?
No, it's not empty space. It used to be industrial arts in the 80s when I started here. And right now it's currently being used by Todd to store equipment and some of the trucks and things that they need to keep dry and clear. And so part of this all along has been trying to figure out what Todd will do. I've said all along, it's kind of a 2-lane piece that we need to find space for Todd's vehicles and equipment in order to renovate for these 2 classrooms.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Okay, Susan, I think you're done, and we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
All righty. So, next steps. I think everybody hopefully can see the slide, April 6th from 2 to 4. Leadership Council and the school board will be coming together to do their session 2 budget workshop. The following day, April 7th, from 2 to 4 p.m., Leadership Council School Board will do their 3rd budget workshop.
A question that I have for the group is there anything about this mode or the way in which this worked today or didn't work for you that we could improve on for Monday?
I thought it worked great.
I think we just need to figure out like how we're doing questions. And if we want to make people live or just take them directly, sorry. But we can figure that out offline if we need to.
I do agree that yeah, we should come to a consensus on that and then set the expectation at the beginning of the meeting.
Agreed.
I'll just note that I'll also make sure that when we come in for the 2nd session and the 3rd session, that we go back to the beginning of the agenda. We do the, call to order and attendance and those things that will make it a real meeting. I don't have a slide for us to adjourn. So when we are satisfied with that we've reached the end of our conversation, I think we'll just do the adjournment the same way that we've been doing it with Leanne and Diane.
Before we go there, April has a question.
It's a request for Kelly. Can we just make sure that we get the PowerPoint presentation posted to the website, Kelly, on where it says like meetings and where we traditionally post, a link to our supporting materials? Today's workshop's not on there, for example.
Yeah, I
And
didn't
if
link
not,
today's, I didn't put today's slides in until about midnight last night, so that's not Kelly's fault. But I
Oh,
have
no,
all
I'm
three of
not.
them, so.
I know what you mean. Yes, I will update that.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. I mean, it's such a small detail, but if you have the time, it's one more thing that I think that's traditionally how people find our stuff. So if we could do that, it would be nice, but.
We'll do that. Thank you for the reminder.
And I
Thank
don't
you.
even know if we have the agendas up there in the same way that we usually do, but that's a great
No.
suggestion.
Any other questions from the board? All right.
Okay, with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
And if we can do a roll call vote.
Ms. Durkin,
Yes.
Mrs. Giftos,
Yes.
Dr. Gill,
Yes.
Ms. Casalunas,
Yes.
Ms. Layton,
Yes.
Ms. Seither,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner,
You're on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Ms. Caldwell, and Mr. Bennett. I don't think they had joined us.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.